This brings us to the grand conclusion of the season. Up until now, we've seen how Nor's incredible, albeit accidental, intervention led his kingdom to a decisive victory in the war. Following the battle, the massive task of repairing the capital begins. The streets are buzzing with activity as workers rebuild the homes of those who were displaced, and the kingdom provides shelter and resources to everyone affected by the conflict. Amidst this chaos, Nor spots the guildmaster's office. Seeing that the building is still standing perfectly intact fills him with a sense of relief and nostalgia. Looking at the old wooden signboard, he can't help but chuckle as he remembers how he was once practically kicked out of there. Back then, after rotating through every elite training school, he hadn't managed to learn a single high-level skill, leading everyone to believe he was a hopeless case. Now, seeing all his former teachers back in the city feels like a warm homecoming. It has been nearly 15 years since he last saw them, and the memories of his childhood training begin to flood back. Nor's journey to becoming a warrior started at the school of Swordmaster Sig, a man famous for his lethal precision and a training regimen so brutal it breaks most men. When Nor first arrived, Sig was skeptical, betting that the scrawny kid wouldn't last 3 days. To his utter shock, Nor was still there on the 10th day, battered but standing. During one session, a massive iron ball was hurled at Nor. He successfully parried it, but the impact was so jarring it dislocated his shoulder and sent his sword clattering to the ground. Sig roared at him, shouting that an enemy wouldn't wait for him to pick up his weapon. Instead of quitting, Nor simply popped his shoulder back in, gripped his sword, and stood ready again. Sig realized then that while Nor lacked mana, he possessed a terrifying level of stubbornness. When Nor asked to see a real skill, Sig took him to the garden and, in a blur faster than the human eye could follow, sliced every falling leaf in midair. To Sig's amazement, Nor described the entire movement in perfect detail. He had seen every microsecond of the strike. Sig realized Nor had a godlike perception and the potential to surpass even him. However, after 3 months, Nor still couldn't perform any flashy sword skills. He could only parry. Since parrying was considered a basic defensive move with little offensive value, Sig told Nor he was wasting his time and sent him to the next school. Next, Nor went to Master Dunda, the mountain of a man who trained the kingdom's warriors. Dunda's training was 100% physical labor and endurance. Looking at Nor's thin frame, Dunda thought the boy would blow away in a strong breeze. He taught Nor that a warrior's true job is to be an unbreakable shield for their comrades. 2 months passed, and Dunda was stunned that the weakling hadn't collapsed. During a training exercise involving falling rocks, a massive section of the cliffside suddenly gave way. While the other trainees fled in terror, Nor stood his ground, staring up at the plummeting boulders. Dunda smashed the rocks to save him and realized that while Nor might look weak, his courage was absolute. But again, after 3 months, Nor gained some muscle but learned no warrior skills, just more endurance. Undeterred, Nor moved on to Miani, the master of archery. Miani decided to test him by giving him a stone and telling him to hit a distant wooden target, expecting him to fail so she could send him home. Nor hit it dead center. Then he did it again, and again. During training, Nor kept using stones instead of arrows. When he finally asked to use a bow, the moment he pulled the string, the wooden frame snapped like a twig. He went through every bow in the school, breaking them all with his raw, uncontrolled physical strength. Finally, Miani gave him her personal bow, a weapon of legendary durability, and Nor snapped that too. Realizing his strength was incompatible with standard gear, she told him to stick to throwing stones. When she asked who taught him to throw like that, Nor casually mentioned he used to hunt colorful birds that stole rabbits. Miani went pale. She realized he was talking about the thunder flash bird, a creature so fast that even veteran hunters consider it impossible to hit. Nor then sought out Carrick, the master of spies and thieves, who specialized in stealth and trap detection. Carrick put Nor in a room filled with lethal hidden traps, telling him to reach a treasure chest at the far end. Instead of carefully searching for tripwires, Nor simply sprinted. He triggered every single trap in the room, but his reflexes were so fast that he parried every arrow, blade, and spike that swung at him. Carrick was floored by Nor's superhuman reaction time but ultimately failed him, noting that the point of being a spy is to avoid traps, not turn them into a loud, metallic percussion concert. Desperate, Nor tried magic with Master Oaken, but Nor couldn't even produce a spark to light a candle. Oaken concluded that Nor's body lacked mana, so he sent him to a sensory deprivation meditation room, hoping it would unlock his inner potential. Oaken expected Nor to come screaming out within minutes due to the mental strain, but 3 days later, he found Nor relaxing inside, perfectly at peace. After 3 grueling months, Nor finally managed to produce a tiny, pathetic flame on his fingertip. Oaken told him a child could do more, but privately, he was shaken. To produce even a tiny flame without a drop of mana was a miracle of pure willpower. Moreover, Nor could do it with both hands simultaneously, a feat of multitasking that had taken Oaken 50 years to master. Finally, Nor went to Master Sane, the high priest. Sane initially refused him because Noor hadn't received the rite of blessing, a divine ritual required for holy magic. Noor refused to leave, eventually collapsing from exhaustion at the temple gates. Moved by his spirit, Sane healed him and agreed to train him. After 3 months, Noor learned Low Heal, a spell that could barely fix a paper cut. Sane, however, was secretly terrified. Using healing magic without a divine blessing was considered a theological impossibility, yet Noor was doing it through sheer grit. The teachers eventually held a secret meeting. They all agreed that Noor was a once-in-a-generation anomaly, a boy who had mastered the basics to a level that defied logic. They wanted to combine their efforts to train him properly, but by then, Noor had already left the capital, convinced he was a failure. The story then jumps back to the present day. Noor takes his old guild sign to the guildmaster, who, unaware that Noor is the literal savior of the kingdom, simply sees him as a low-rank errand boy. He tells Noor there's plenty of rubble to be cleared, and Noor, happy to be useful, gets right to work. As he shovels debris, Noor thinks about what a crazy adventure he had, riding a carriage, meeting Rollo, and flying with Lynn's magic. To him, these were the highlights, not the fact that he destroyed an army and a dragon. Meanwhile, King Clakish and Prince Rain discuss the dark political clouds on the horizon. They've discovered that the nation of Mitra was secretly funding Diridisu, meaning a much larger war might be coming. However, the king is comforted by the fact that they have a secret weapon, a man named Noor who treats the impossible as a daily chore. As dawn breaks, Noor finishes clearing the debris. He sees Princess Lynn distributing food to the citizens. She approaches him, hands him a meal, and thanks him once again with a look of deep admiration. Noor, the man who saved the world, looks at the sky and sighs, wishing that one day he could go on a real adventure and become a true hero like the ones in his father's stories. He then picks up his shovel and gets back to work as Season 1 comes to an end. Personally, I find the story of this anime fascinating, though Noor's cluelessness is almost legendary. Imagine saving an entire kingdom and then going right back to cleaning gutters without realizing you're the strongest man alive. While Season 2 hasn't been officially announced yet, I am definitely excited to see where Noor's accidental journey takes him next. Which anime should I explain next? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button, share the video, and if you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell icon. I'll see you all very soon with the next video. Thank you.